Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It has been an incredible privilege to be elected as the federal member for Flynn at the 2022 federal election. I've worked hard to get around as many local communities as possible, and this has been a significant challenge given the fact that the Flynn electorate is over 132,000 square kilometres in area, almost twice the size of Tasmania. It stretches from the Central Highlands in the west, Gracemere in the north, to Gladstone in the east and Wandai and Proston in the south. I travel approximately 50,000 kilometres a year, staying in touch with our local communities, and spend 20 weeks a year in Canberra representing Flynn in the federal parliament. In my first year as the federal member, I spent 73 nights at home. In this time, I've seen firsthand the detrimental impacts of legislation and policies that can have on our regional communities. The Labor government continues to implement the one-size-fits-all bureaucratic policy that just does not work. One issue that I hear constantly is the lack of childcare in regional Australia. In my electorate, many families cannot find childcare or a place for their child. This is preventing parents from returning to work sooner. Our communities need availability and accessibility as well as affordability. Centres are capping enrolments, closing rooms and asking children to stay home. I've spoken to families stuck on waiting lists, unable to work because there are no places to look after their children. In February this year, the Labor government opened the Community Childcare Fund Competitive Round 4 Disadvantaged and Vulnerable Communities Grant. The intent of the outcome for the community grant were to support early childhood education care, ECEC services, operating in underserved, disadvantaged and vulnerable communities to be able to address or have increased capacity to address community-level barriers to child participation in early childhood services. Also to increase the number of children from vulnerable or disadvantaged families and communities accessing ECEC. Viability of ECEC services operating in disadvantaged communities, including in areas with fluctuating and or low short-term demand. Also increased availability of ECEC places in disadvantaged communities with high or unmet demand. Whilst I welcome these grants and its intent, it's another example of bureaucratic nonsense. This grant was open for 1 month. In just 1 month, it appears the Labor government and the minister obviously don't want anybody to apply. The eligibility criteria meant small community kindergartens in rural and remote Australia who wish to expand to make daycare services available are ineligible to receive the Community Childcare Fund for disadvantaged and vulnerable communities because they cannot get approval for childcare services under the Family Assistance Law until the grant is received and the facility is built in the first place. So what genius came up with this idea? Instead of taking action to improve access to childcare for rural Australians, Labor is spending billions on subsidising childcare costs for families in the big city, whilst ignoring rural and regional Australia. In September 2022, I wrote to the Treasurer about increasing community concerns around the lack of childcare in the electorate of Flynn, especially in our more rural regions, and the financial barriers in entering the sector when establishing a family daycare centre. This government must deliver more access to early childhood education and care places to support Australians returning to the workforce and the real cost of living relief for families. Deputy Speaker, for almost 2 years, it's been almost 2 years since the federal government made its 2022 election commitments. Hundreds of projects have still yet failed to commence, and according to documents recently released to Parliament. Organisations and councils in Flynn have been unfairly subject to long and unnecessary bureaucratic processes. Our community has been forced to jump through the Albanese government's hoops just to receive the funding that was promised to them before Labor was elected. In my electorate, 4 projects have failed to commence and are still being held up by Labor's incompetence. These include the Stage 3B of the Biloela Reardon Street Industrial Estate that was promised. This was set to create up to 100 skilled jobs, with the facility giving local entrepreneurs the workshop space they need to compete for more industrial work, leading to more skilled jobs for local workers. and I ask the government, where is the money? The Boyne Island Tenham Sharks Football Clubhouse expansion was promised. This expansion included facilities that will allow players to have access to state-of-the-art sporting venues. More than 250 players, coaches and volunteers play on the Sharks football field, not to mention the tens of thousands of families, friends and visitors who come to the venue each year. And again, I ask the government, where is the money? The Gladstone Regional Indoor Sports Complex was promised, and that was set to have a new facility to host basketball, futsal, MMA, netball, volleyball, roller derby and a host of other indoor activities. And again, I ask, where's the money? The Aquatic Centre at Boyne Island and Tenham Sands was promised, which was set to deliver a brand new aquatic facility, including an Olympic-sized pool with an aquatic play and exercise feature for many families. And once again, where is the money? These delays demonstrate the low regard the Albanese government has for the Flynn community groups, and councils have been left in a lurch by the Labor government after they promised these projects would be delivered. Deputy Speaker, I would like to make you aware of a group of high-profile agriculturalists, including agricultural bodies such as AgForce and Queensland Farmers Federation, that have filed pending legal action in the federal court with respect to the carbon dioxide sequestering project into the Great Artesian Basin by resources giant Glencore. This project was deemed not a controlled action by the federal EPBC office in February 2021. It defies logic that the EPBC Act, in its current form, offers no protection to the waters of the Great Artesian Basin unless it concerns coal or gas. The Great Artesian Basin is the world's largest underground potable water source. It needs to be protected from the lunacy of dumping industrial waste to create carbon credits so that large corporations can generate billions in revenue. Last year, the Nationals proposed a critical amendment to the Nature Repair Market Bill 2023 to protect the Great Artesian Basin from companies pumping hypercritical CO2 fluid into it. However, the Labor government and the Greens voted the amendments down, another deplorable decision by this government. Deputy Speaker, last week the Queensland Labor government announced that $500 million had been committed to the beef corridors in central Queensland, despite the federal Labor government pushing back the start date of the upgrade from the 2025 financial year until the 27-28 financial year. The project was due to be jointly funded with $400 million from the federal government and $100 million from the state government. Premier Miles and Prime Minister Albanese need to jump in a car and see firsthand how bad these roads are and stop making decisions that are affecting the lives of our regional communities from their desks in Brisbane and Canberra. I invite both of them to come for a drive in a truck, and I'm sure that they will have a change of mind. Central Queensland is the economic engine room of Australia, yet the Labor government continues to kick vital infrastructure funding to the bottom of the priority list. The Labor government's decision to delay funding to the beef corridors is evidence that they are happy to treat Central Queensland like a cash cow, but not invest in the infrastructure the regions need. This delay places a question mark over the project, a project that has the support of 7 mayors from 7 Queensland local government areas. But why is this that the Labor government continues to bite the hand that feeds it? The government has introduced a new tax to Parliament which will force Australian farmers to pay for biosecurity costs on international importers, pushing up Australian-grown produce prices at supermarkets. The Labor government will now set the tax rate as a proportion of an industry's average gross value over production over a 3-year period, rather than the base rate of 10% on industry-led levies, due to confusion in the levy system and inequity. Yet at the same time, they've betrayed Central Queensland by delaying the beef corridor upgrade, an upgrade that will not only improve road safety for all users, but from a strategic web of agricultural supply chains from east to west. The beef corridors upgrade is about improving road safety for all road users, while enhancing the productivity through reducing or eliminating impediments on delivery. Deputy Speaker, almost 2 years since the last federal election, and we've seen failure after failure in Central Queensland by this Labor government, and I will continue to hold it to account and I will be campaigning hard for the return of a coalition government at the next election.
I call the